Nobody in Seoul talked about Shin Jae-won anymore. Not since the accident. Not since the woman he was going to marry looked at the wheelchair and chose the exit. 2 years of silence followed. Then the invitation arrived. His ex-fiancée's wedding. And Shin Jae-won did something nobody expected. He went. But not alone. He turned to the one woman who had stayed through every brutal morning of those 2 years. Who had never once softened her voice around him. Who had never once looked at him like he was broken. His personal assistant. McKenna. Come with me, he said quietly. McKenna, composed, professional, who had survived every silence this man had ever thrown at her, felt something she'd locked behind her ribs for 2 years cracked completely open. She breathed in. What time should I be ready? Relief crossed his face. The kind that only comes when someone says yes to the thing you were terrified they'd refuse. 2 o'clock. Saturday came. The wedding hall was everything perfection looked like: white peonies, candlelight, 300 guests dressed in old money and quiet power. Soft music. Champagne. Laughter filling every corner. Then the doors opened. And the laughter stopped. Every head turned. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Every glass froze halfway to every mouth. Because rolling through those doors, shoulders back, jaw set, eyes carrying the quiet authority of a man who had rebuilt everything they'd assumed was finished, was Shin Jae-won. And walking beside him. Not behind him. Not slightly to the left in the careful position of a professional. Directly beside him. Was a woman in deep emerald green who moved like she had never once in her life apologized for existing. McKenna. Calm. Poised. Her hand rested on his shoulder, not like a caregiver. Like a partner. Like someone who had earned the right to stand exactly where she was standing. The whispers started immediately. Is that his assistant? She's stunning. But the whispers died the moment people saw his face. The way Shin Jae-won was looking at her. Not with gratitude. Not with dependence. With the specific, devastating expression of a man looking at the person who had saved him. The bride's smile cracked the moment she understood what she was seeing. Because the man across that room had walked in carrying something she had never once given him in 3 years of engagement. He looked whole. More whole than she had ever made him. And the woman beside him. This woman she had dismissed as just an assistant. Was the reason why. Shin Jae-won's eyes found his ex-fiancée across the frozen room. And into the complete silence of 300 people holding their breath. He said 6 words. Quietly. Calmly. 6 words that made the whole room understand exactly what they were witnessing. Stay right here because what happened next rewrote every story they thought they knew. Before I continue, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification to know when next we drop jaw-dropping Afro-Korean romance story, and tell us where you are watching from in the comments section. Back to the story. The 6 words landed like a quiet earthquake. Thank you for setting me free. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They settled. Like dust after an explosion. No one laughed. No one clapped. No one knew where to look. The bride's fingers tightened around her bouquet until the stems bent. Her smile stayed frozen, fragile, like porcelain under pressure. The groom glanced at her, confused, unsettled, already sensing that something had gone wrong on a day meant to be perfect. McKenna felt it then, the shift. The room hadn't just gone quiet. It had reoriented. Eyes moved. Attention recalibrated. Power flowed back to the man everyone had written off. Shin Jae-won didn't wait for a response. He turned his head slightly. Just enough to look at McKenna. Not asking. Not seeking permission. Checking in. She met his gaze and gave a single nod. I'd like to take my seat, he said calmly. The usher scrambled, suddenly unsure of protocol. Oh, of course. Front row. As listed. As listed. McKenna's hand remained on his shoulder as they moved forward together. Not hurried. Not cautious. Every roll of the wheels deliberate. Every step she took matched his pace exactly. They reached their seats. Front row. Center. The place once reserved for the woman who left. McKenna sat beside him without hesitation. Behind them, whispers tried to return, but they were softer now. Less curious. More careful. Because something had become very clear. This wasn't a man attending his ex's wedding. This was a man closing a chapter. McKenna leaned in slightly. You okay? Yes, he said. Then, after a beat, quieter, meant only for her. I am now. The ceremony continued, but it felt different. The vows sounded rehearsed. Safe. Predictable. McKenna watched the bride speak about forever while glancing, again and again, at the man in the wheelchair who looked more alive than anyone in the room. She had never seen that look on Shin Jae-won before. Not in boardrooms. Not in hospital rooms. Not in the quiet mornings where he drank coffee without tasting it. This was clarity. When the officiant announced the couple as married, applause followed, polite, expected. Shin Jae-won clapped once. Respectfully. Then stopped. At the reception, the energy shifted again. People approached carefully, as if unsure which version of him they were allowed to acknowledge. Jae-won, an older executive said, clearing his throat. It's good to see you. Likewise, Shin replied evenly. The man's eyes flicked to McKenna. And you are? McKenna didn't answer immediately. Shin did. This is McKenna. Not assistant. Not PA. Just her name. The executive nodded slowly. I've heard quite a bit about you. McKenna smiled, polite but unbothered. Then you already know everything important. Across the room, the bride watched. Really watched this time. The way Shin leaned subtly toward McKenna when he spoke. The way McKenna adjusted his jacket without asking. The way he never once looked around for validation. He already had it. Later, near the terrace doors, the bride intercepted McKenna. I didn't expect this, she said, voice low, smile tight. McKenna met her gaze calmly. Neither did I. You've been very present in his life. Yes, McKenna agreed. I have. The bride hesitated. He changed after the accident. McKenna nodded once. So did I. A pause. Then, carefully, you seem important to him. McKenna didn't gloat. Didn't soften. I am. The bride swallowed. Shin Jae-won appeared beside McKenna without either of them noticing when. Everything all right? Yes, McKenna said easily. The bride forced another smile. Of course. Congratulations, on your recovery. Shin Jae-won inclined his head. Thank you. It required losing the right things. They left her standing there. On the dance floor, music slowed. The lights dimmed. Shin Jae-won looked up at McKenna. Dance with me. Her breath caught. Here. Yes. People will talk. They already are. She smiled then. Not careful. Not restrained. All right. They moved onto the floor together. No spectacle. No performance. Just presence. McKenna rested her hand where it belonged. Shin guided with quiet confidence. The room watched, but no one interrupted. Because what they were witnessing wasn't defiance. It was evolution. And somewhere between the first step and the second. Both of them understood the same truth. This was never about the wedding. It was about what survived when everything else walked away. And this. This was only the beginning. They didn't stay long. Not because they were unwelcome, but because the night had already given them everything it was meant to. In the car, Seoul glided past in streaks of light. McKenna loosened her shoulders for the first time since afternoon. The adrenaline finally ebbed, leaving something softer behind. You were quiet, Shin Jae-won said. I was listening, she replied. To what? To the silence, she said honestly. It felt different tonight. He nodded. Because it wasn't empty. The car stopped at his residence. Not the hospital-adjacent apartment he'd hidden in after the accident, but the penthouse he hadn't stepped into in nearly 2 years. McKenna noticed. You're sure? She asked. Yes, he said. I don't want to go back to where I was broken. The elevator ride was slow. Intentional. The city rose beneath them as the doors slid open. Inside, the penthouse was untouched, like time had paused and waited for him to return. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Cold marble. Silence that used to feel oppressive. McKenna stepped in carefully. This place always felt lonely, she said. It was, he replied. Then looked at her. It isn't now. She turned to him. The weight of the night pressed gently between them. Not urgent. Not rushed. You were incredible tonight, she said. So were you. A pause. Then, quieter, McKenna, why did you stay? The question landed softly, but it carried 2 years of restraint. She didn't answer immediately. When I was hired, she began, everyone treated you like a project. A liability. A tragedy to manage. Her eyes lifted to his. You didn't need that. You needed someone who didn't flinch. And you didn't. No, she said. Because I saw you before the accident. And after. And you were still you. His jaw tightened, not in pain, but in emotion. I was afraid, he admitted. That if I reached for anything, I'd lose it. She stepped closer. You didn't lose me. He looked at her then, the look stripped of ceremony, stripped of witnesses. Stay, he said. Not a command. A request. McKenna inhaled. I already am. He reached for her hand, not tentative, not uncertain. Just honest. The kind of touch that didn't promise forever but acknowledged something undeniable. They stood there, framed by the city they had both survived in different ways. No kiss. Not yet. Just two people finally standing on the same side of their own story. Outside, Seoul kept moving. Inside, something settled into place. And for the first time since the accident, Shin Jae-won wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. He was thinking about what he was about to claim. The warning came sooner than McKenna expected. Not through gossip. Not through the media. But through a quiet knock at her office door the next morning. She looked up from her tablet. Come in. The woman who stepped inside didn't wait for permission to sit. Elegant. Controlled. Familiar. Shin Jae-won's ex-fiancée. She closed the door behind her carefully, as if sealing something dangerous inside the room. I won't take much of your time, she said. McKenna didn't stand. Didn't offer a seat. Then say what you came to say. The ex smiled thinly. You're brave. Walking into that wedding. Standing beside him like that. McKenna's voice stayed even. That wasn't bravery. That was honesty. The smile vanished. You should stop, the woman said quietly. McKenna finally looked up. Stop what? Whatever you think you're building with him. She folded her hands. You don't understand how his world works. McKenna studied her. Not with anger. With clarity. I understand exactly how it works. I've been in it for 2 years. You were useful, the ex snapped before catching herself. Then corrected, smoother. You helped him recover. And for that, the family is grateful. McKenna felt the chill then. The family? Yes. A pause. And now they're ready to move on. McKenna leaned back slowly. So am I, if that's what he wants. That won't be up to you. The words landed sharp. He is Shin Jae-won, the ex continued. An only son. An heir. His parents have already selected someone appropriate. Educated. Korean. Someone who fits. McKenna didn't blink. You came all this way to remind me of my skin. The woman didn't deny it. You should leave before it gets ugly, she said. Before they make you. McKenna stood. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't tremble. You left when things got hard, she said calmly. I stayed when there was nothing to gain. If his family wants to erase me, they'll have to explain why the man they're so proud of only survived because of me. The ex's eyes hardened. This isn't a threat. It's a warning. McKenna stepped closer. Then hear mine. Silence stretched. I'm not asking to belong, McKenna said. I already do. The woman turned and left without another word. That evening, Shin Jae-won noticed immediately. You're carrying something, he said. McKenna hesitated. Then told him everything. He listened without interruption. Without surprise. When she finished, his jaw was set, not with doubt, but with resolve. They've been arranging meetings, he admitted. I said no. You shouldn't have to fight them because of me. He reached for her hand. I'm not fighting because of you. I'm fighting because they don't get to decide my life anymore. McKenna searched his face. This could cost you. I already paid the highest price once, he said quietly. I won't pay it again by losing you. The next day, the summons came. A formal dinner. Family only. McKenna wasn't invited. Shin Jae-won cancelled. The house shook. Calls. Pressure. Ultimatums. And then, the final move. A press leak. Anonymous. Calculated. The Shin family prepares to announce a suitable match for their son, signaling a return to tradition. McKenna read the headline slowly. Shin Jae-won took the phone from her hand. Look at me, he said. She did. They think this will make you step back, he continued. It won't. What if they force you? They can't, he said. Not unless I let them. He paused. Then added, softer but unbreakable. And I won't. But somewhere in the shadows, plans were already moving. Because this time, the people trying to separate them weren't strangers. They were blood. And they were done asking. The confrontation didn't happen in public. That would have been too easy. It happened behind closed doors, in the Shin family home, the one place Shin Jae-won hadn't returned to since the accident. McKenna waited outside. Not because she was afraid to go in. But because he asked her to trust him. Inside, tradition sat heavy in the air. His mother spoke first. You embarrassed us. I reclaimed myself, Shin Jae-won replied calmly. His father's voice followed, colder. You owe this family stability. Legacy. A wife who understands our world. I understand it, Shin said. Better than you think. It's the world that left when I couldn't walk. Silence. Then the final card was played. She is temporary, his mother said. You know this. She was there for recovery. Gratitude clouds your judgment. Shin Jae-won leaned forward. No, he said quietly. You are confusing gratitude with love because you have never stayed long enough in pain to tell the difference. They spoke of optics. Of shareholders. Of bloodlines. And then, of McKenna. Not by name. By implication. She does not belong. That was when Shin Jae-won stood. I didn't survive the accident to live half a life, he said. I won't marry a stranger to make you comfortable. And I will not discard the woman who held my life together when all of you stepped back. His father's face hardened. If you choose her, you choose against us. Shin Jae-won didn't hesitate. Then I choose her. Outside, McKenna saw the doors open. She stood straighter. He rolled toward her without looking back. The staff froze. The house felt suddenly smaller. In the car, neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then McKenna said, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," he replied. "I did." Weeks passed. The arranged match disappeared quietly. The press corrected itself. Rumors turned into respect. Then came the announcement, short, unceremonious, impossible to ignore. Shin Jae-won would be returning to the board. With McKenna as his chief of staff. Not assistant. Staff. Equal authority. Equal presence. The world reacted exactly as expected. And then, it adjusted. On a quiet evening, back in the penthouse, McKenna stood by the window, city lights reflecting in her eyes. "You changed everything," she said. He rolled up beside her. "So did you." She turned. "What happens now?" He reached into his jacket, "Not a ring." "Not yet. Just a document." He handed it to her. "A partnership agreement. Personal and professional. I won't build anything without you again," he said. "Not my company. Not my life." McKenna laughed softly, emotion breaking through. "You know this scares me." "It should," he said. "It's real." She looked at him. Really looked. The man they tried to bury. The woman they tried to erase. Together. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. His hand closed over hers. "Neither am I." Months later, something else happened. Quietly. Without announcements. Without press releases. Shin Jae-won took his first step. It wasn't dramatic. No cameras. No applause. Just McKenna in the room. Physical therapy had been brutal, painful, slow, humbling. There were days he wanted to stop. Days his legs trembled like they didn't belong to him. And every time, McKenna stayed. Not cheering. Not pitying. Just steady. Again, she would say. And he would try. The day he stood without support, his breath broke before his voice did. "I can feel the floor," he whispered. McKenna covered her mouth, tears finally winning. "I know." Weeks turned into months. The chair disappeared from the room. Then from the house. Then from memory. The world noticed. "Miracle recovery," the headline said. But Shin Jae-won knew the truth. It wasn't a miracle. It was endurance. And love. The day he walked unaided into the Shin family home, silence followed him again, but this time, it was different. His mother stood first. Then slowly, deliberately, she walked toward McKenna. Everyone held their breath. She reached out, and took McKenna's hands. "You stayed," she said simply. "When we failed." McKenna bowed instinctively. But the woman lifted her back up. "No," she said. "In this house, you do not bow." From that day on, everything changed. McKenna was no longer introduced as staff. No longer whispered about. No longer questioned. She was seated at the table. Asked for her opinion. Defended when absent. And slowly, genuinely. Loved. The woman they once tried to erase, they now protected. At a formal dinner months later, Shin Jae-won stood, fully standing, beside McKenna. He lifted his glass. "To the woman who never left me when I couldn't walk," he said calmly. "And who walked with me when I could." The room rose in applause. McKenna squeezed his hand, laughing softly through tears. He took a step. Then another. McKenna's breath caught. "You're walking," she whispered. He didn't answer. He reached for her instead, thumb brushing her cheek. Their foreheads touched, one shared breath. Then he kissed her. Soft. Certain. Unrushed. Just enough to say I'm here. I chose you *. When they parted, his mother stepped forward, placing a silk shawl over McKenna's shoulders. Welcome home, she said. Shin Jae-won took McKenna's hand. Together, they walked on. If you love this jaw-dropping Afro-Korean romance, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell us in the comments, would you stand beside someone like McKenna no matter what the world said? Drop your best reaction sticker in the comment and tell us where you're watching from.